Speaker, the background to the arrival of this bill for its first reading in Parliament has been well traversed. Coalition agreement between ACT and National stipulates that National will support the Treaty Principles Bill for its first reading and to select committee, and that's what we're doing today. The Prime Minister also has indicated many times that as far as the National Party is concerned, that as far as our support will go. Parliament first referred to the principles of the treaty in the 1970s, but never defined them. The court stepped into that vacuum over the past 30-odd years. The principles of the treaty, such as the concept of partnership, have gained more and more weight over time. It is, of course, appropriate for politicians and the public to debate what the treaty means today and what it should mean in the future. The interpretations given by the courts are not gospel. We should be able to debate these things. Our concern comes, however, with the process under this bill, whereby Parliament would simply set down its interpretation of the treaty and then seek a majority of the public to confirm it in a referendum. This is a crude way to handle a very delicate subject. With a wave of the wand, as it were, we would unwind more than 30 years of jurisprudence, winner takes all. Of course, there will be a wide variety of views amongst Māori, just as there is amongst any group. But those opposed to the changes will likely conclude that fundamental change is being imposed on them by a majority if it were to pass. That would risk stoking an already keen sense of grievance. It would risk increasing divisions in our country rather than reducing them. That's why National has indicated it will not support the bill in its final stages or for it to be put to a referendum. We believe the better way to address the many legitimate questions about the role of the treaty in our democracy today is to progress the numerous specific changes we are making issue by issue. The guiding principle is that in our efforts to honour Treaty of Waitangi commitments and the treaty settlement, we should never lose sight of the basic expectations of people living in a modern democratic society.
Yeah, order. Enough of that constant across the House comment that adds nothing to the debate. No, the member not shocked at that. If I was to write it down and present it to him, he'd be horrified. The Honourable Paul Goldsmith.
The guiding principle is that in our efforts to honour Treaty of Waitangi commitments and treaty settlements, we should never lose sight of the basic expectations of people living in a modern democratic society, such as equal voting rights, equality before the law, and broadly speaking, an equal say in matters affecting their lives and the world around them. There is a tension between those two things, between honouring commitments to Māori flowing from the treaty and the basic expectations of equality in a modern democracy. This is a tension that can't just be glossed over or ignored. Our proposition is that as a nation, we should be serious in our commitment to the first, but in doing so should be careful never to lose sight of or drift too far from the second. To be absolutist in the sense of demanding perfect equal treatment on absolutely everything would be to overlook the complications of history and commitments made. All democracies have kinks in them flowing from historical compromises. Think of the UK House of Lords, or the fact that voters in the US Senate elections in Wyoming have a much greater say than voters in California. At the same time, to drift too far from basic equality would be an invitation to disaster. So this is not a topic that lends itself to a neat, tidy, single solution. It has to be worked through issue by issue, which is what we are doing. That's why we have reasserted the principle that healthcare should be delivered on the basis of need alone. That's why we're pushing back against the previous government's move against equal voting rights in local government. That's why we're unwinding co-governance arrangements in core public services and a separate Māori Health Authority. That's why we've taken the unusual step of overturning the reasoning behind a Court of Appeal ruling in the Marine and Coastal Area Act to restore a high test before the customary marine title is awarded on parts of our coastline. That's why we're embarking on the mammoth task of reviewing the treaty references in existing legislation to ensure they're clear about what Parliament does and doesn't mean. At the same time, we're committed to continuing and completing the treaty settlement process began in the 1990s. It's been a bipartisan effort over decades and involved thousands of Māori up and down the country studying history, negotiating, forming new structures and managing settlements. The settlements have never been an exercise in attaining perfection, but it is the best effort across many generations, and we're proud of those efforts. The government will never lose sight of the reality that the things that most Māori want are the same as what most other New Zealanders want: a strong economy that can deliver jobs and incomes and sustain good standing of living, decent housing, to feel safe in their community and for their kids to access great education that set them up to succeed. The reality is that in each of those areas, point of order, Mr. Speaker.
No, your time's up. So.
Yeah, well, I was interrupted half a dozen times by the barracking and intimidation on the other side.
Sit down.
Hey?
Sit down.
Can I keep
time's
going?
up.
Oh, my time's up.
The Honourable Casey Costello.
I was not expecting that.
Sit down. Your time's up. Yes.
Oh.
Is there anything more shallow and hollow and empty than a National Party MP pretending to support a bill that they're going to vote against?
Yeah.
Are they?
It's going to cost $4 million too.
If I could ask Sam, if we could avoid having to listen to national MPs, all they all did was say, we don't really support it. We have to do this because we agree. That's all they said, and then they said half cut, and their half cut reasons, but then chucked in some weasel words for their own platform. It was really, really embarrassing for them.
Well, there's a little while away before we get to the next national MP. But I mean, we wanted to get all the MP speeches in there so that everyone can sit down there and see what they all say.
Oh, please. This is getting torturous.
What we didn't touch on is the fact, I think I did say, that the virtually all the front bench of the government evacuated the premises, and most of their other MPs, and they just had a bare minimum there, and it was really telling. You know, the old nose, drink the medicine treatment. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're literally running the minimum number of MPs they need in the House for their, because I think you have to have a certain percentage of MPs in the House, because I know from what Greg O'Connor told me when it was the banning of gay conversion therapy bill, he said the most annoying part was every person who was doing a speech was standing next to him, so he had to get nodding on the camera to go, because he was on the camera, so he couldn't actually get out his laptop and actually do some work. But yeah, there are rules around the number of MPs you're meant to have in there. And yeah, as I sometimes call them, seat warmers.
I mean, hell, Luxon wasn't there. He ran away.
Isn't he overseas again?
Yeah, he's got the backbone that's got the tensile strength of David Seymour's used tissues after he's finished working all over the treaty.
I will
Who the hell is he?
Every National Party MP attempted to get onto the Luxon trip overseas.